So, this morning, well, actually this afternoon, I'm at another of my favourite places. This is the park behind the Royal Palace at Low. A low is a clearing in a forest, but it's spelled L-O-O. So, it's Low. Royal Palace, built in imitation of Versailles, and had actually fountains which were higher than the fountains at Versailles, in whenever that was, 1680 something, by or for William and Mary, in fact, the William and Mary. Yeah, so that's a lake in which there are some trout and various ducks. And the interesting ducks are there in the distance. No, the interesting ducks have disappeared. I saw some mandarin ducks, sort of ornamental ducks. And, okay, and you can hear the geese. There's some geese, wild geese. There were a lot more before I sat down here. Now they're looking for a more quiet place to carry on. Oh, yeah, and over there you see a couple of Egyptian Nile ducks. I mean, we don't approve of them because they're, aliens. They're doing pretty well nowadays. Moved from the Nile up here, where it's quite warm enough for them. Okay, there's a bag of mine on that nice. And over there is a field where one often sees a deer grazing. And not far from here you can probably meet wild swine. And don't come too close to them, especially a bit later in the year when they have young ones. And you should especially fear the females at that stage. But that's quite a while away. Now, I was hoping we would be hearing the enormous clattering of woodpeckers. I saw a lot as I walked here, and now they've gone quiet too. This is very, very dull, very dull. There's some of the geese walking around, grazing quite peacefully here. And a collapsed ancient oak tree remains of. Yeah, so what about Lucy Letby? Not much to say. I was very struck this morning by a beautiful YouTube film made by a guy called Tim Hunt, who has taken one of the podcasts of the Daily Mail ladies, Caroline, what's her name, and Liz Hull, and sort of plays it and commenting on it and commenting on how they are basically, they are broadcasting the prosecution view, making all kinds of insinuations and suggestions, suggesting that things are suspicious, which are not suspicious at all. But of course, they were convinced. They were there during the trial. They sat there every day for 10 months. They heard about the horrible ends of all those poor defenseless little babies, and they lapped it up, and they became totally convinced. Right, well, I'm not surprised the jury was convinced. I'm not surprised those ladies were convinced. We know a lot of what they heard was not true, and the scientific evidence in particular, though of course pretty incomprehensible anyway, but a heap of it, and we now know it's utterly discredited, I would say, very clearly, if you've got ears to hear and a brain to understand it a little bit, just a little bit. And we know so much more now. Okay, so we are just waiting for the CCRC now, and people were saying, yeah, the application to the CCRC has been submitted. But if you look up the CCRC website, you see that they have received a preliminary application. So the CCRC has been told that an application is coming and has been given some material already. But in fact, the application to the CCRC has not yet been delivered. That doesn't matter. I imagine Mark MacDonald is working day and night with a lot of experts around him to complete it, have it completed, and I for one hoping for the best. What else did we hear? Oh, there's a new head of the NHS. Yeah, like I mean, it doesn't promise very well. The new head. He was a few years ago. He was one of the 5 most influential people in the UK health business, and he's Sir something or other, and he's been running Northumbria and the various other things. I mean, Northumbria Trust, NHS Trust, and he's been trained as an accountant, so he presumably knows a great deal about money in the NHS. Well, it's clear that NHS is in a big mess, and maybe he can sort it out. Who knows? That's clearly his job now. Yeah, the boss of the CCRC was kicked out. The previous boss of NHS was basically kicked out. I mean, all these people, leave just before they were pushed. They fall anyway, and they take the sort of honourable route to resign a little bit before they are actually ordered to quit. Anything else? Well, I've been having some attacks by people who are actually supporters of, the course for a fair retrial of Lucy Letby, or the full exoneration of her. I mean, she should be exonerated. I think the convictions should be quashed, and an inquiry should be held. And the inquiry can also inquire into what the hell the Thirlwell inquiry was all about, because it was a pretty stupid thing, though of course it has again and again provided fantastic ammunition for the Lucy Letby innocent side, or likely miscarriage of justice side. It doesn't matter what your opinion is at the moment, but there's a huge movement now which knows that the convictions were not safe, that was not beyond reasonable doubt that she was guilty. It's not beyond reasonable doubt, so she shouldn't be in jail. And how the system should fix that, well, the system will do its damnedest to take as long as possible about it. Well, there were people angry with me because apparently I've said critical things about Sarita Adams. Well, I think Sarita Adams is wonderful, and her work has been seminal, really a milestone. That's fantastic. What she did, approaching the court while the trial was on, shredding a great deal of the medical evidence. And what is the recent news? Well, the recent news is that her PhD has suddenly been placed on the website of Cambridge University, which is a good thing, because it proves that she has a PhD. And there's some discussion about the date which is on it, because the date which is being published is the date the final version of the PhD was submitted, and that is clearly it was I mean, presumably, almost certainly, it was very shortly after that accepted, because it was presumably a revised version which satisfied the corrections which were typically which are normally asked to be made. A few things need to be changed, and you have to formatted it in the right way and have the right title page and the right appendix and this, that, and the other. So that was all done. So this shows that she could have had the PhD in a formal sense in 2015, but it seems likely, it's possible, and some say very likely, that she only actually received the PhD degree quite recently, because that would be the trigger for the publication. Now, I don't know. She's not saying. She has. I mean, as far as I know, she hasn't said. I don't think it's any criticism of Sarita to say that we don't know when she received the PhD degree, and it's in my opinion actually almost pretty irrelevant. She could well have had good reasons for not doing the final steps of actually being awarded the PhD degree back then, some months after the final version of the thesis was submitted and presumably approved. Well, I just don't understand why the mystery. Why the mystery? Okay, is it just a bureaucratic mess or whatever? I would say if Sarita has a PhD, then she presumably has the diploma, and on the diploma will be maybe written in Latin the date at which the PhD was awarded, and I'm inquisitive as to when that was, though of course it's not my business and it's pretty irrelevant. Anyway, people accuse me of saying bad things about Sarita, and then they don't tell me what they were, and I wish they would just email me and point out what the bad things are I'm supposed to have said, and I will correct them and apologize. Similarly, I got some criticism on X about my recent YouTube film talking about triage, and posing the question, why were babies with the most acute, who needed medically the most intensive high-level neonatal care, why were they being transferred from level 3 units to what was, let's be honest, really a level 1 unit? Somebody was complaining that I shouldn't make accusations like this without evidence. Well, it's not an accusation. It's posing a question, and I do have some evidence, and I know about more evidence, and I will gladly share it with journalists, for instance, who are interested in checking it and researching it further. I'm gratified that people have been commenting on my video with, anecdotes of triage in the NHS at the other end of life. Somebody's 70-year-old dad told that he was not going to be put into intensive care because the doctors preferred to give that place to a 10-year-old kid. Well, I would be proud if I was 70, and I would be proud to give my place, give up intensive care in order to save a 10-year-old child. Isn't that obvious? So there are a lot of things that happen in healthcare which people don't talk about. There are all kinds of taboos, especially in England, where people are still, I'm afraid, a little bit behind the times compared to where we are in Holland. and all kinds of practices in healthcare and in hospitals and of doctors, which good doctors have been always done since time immemorial, and they still have to be done. They're the right things to do. They do have to decide how to devote their resources, because the resources are not infinite, and there are more and less needy cases, and these are the life and death decisions. I mean, there's a video where John Gibbs talks to a church group and talks about the life and death choices and compares it with being God, playing God. Dr. John Gibbs himself lecturing a church group in an evening meeting on medical ethics, said explicitly that in his practice, or implied in his practice, that he from time to time had to play God, make life and death decisions for other persons, on behalf of other persons, including death decisions, right? You have to make those decisions. It means they could go both ways. And he was very honest about that. He seems to me to be a fairly decent person, in fact. Very old school. Right. People who complain about that, I wish, first of all, that they wouldn't only complain on X, because I might not see their complaints on X, because I don't read everything in which I've been tagged by many things I don't. I mean, and annoying people who I don't want to pay any attention to. I mute so as not to be, so as to have. That's also triage, you know. I mean, I'd love to pay attention to everybody who wants to talk to me, but I can't. So I will triage you, and especially if you're rude and obnoxious, I will. It's going to be clear to me that there is no benefit to me to listening to you. So please, all those people out there, try and be civilized and polite. Calling me names and writing out a heap of expletives, Anglo-Saxon swear words. Okay, I mean, so you're blowing off steam, releasing your frustration and feelings, but I don't have to hear that. And you're not communicating anything. You're just telling us that you're probably an idiot and a nasty person as well. I mean, you're making you're cloaking your message. You're making your message very, very ignorable, if you had one. I mean, many of such people don't have a message at all. They are just trolls. So please send me an email. Send me a polite email if you have criticisms. I like to learn from my mistakes, I may admit. I try to admit them when I make them, which I do, as everybody does. Like those doctors at the Countess of Chester. They made mistakes, like many doctors do. It's in the Dutch we have a saying, where wood is chopped, splinters fly around, you know. Yes, you work hard and intensively, and you're going to make some mistakes from time to time. Now, people who make mistakes but do not admit them are not going to learn from them, and that's the big problem. That's the big problem which the new director of the NHS should be addressing. Stop the bullying, stop the cover-up mentality, protect whistleblowers. Come off it. Whistleblowers in the NHS are not protected. They are usually end up without a job, or worse in Lucy Letby's case. Right, there's some nice little geese. You can hear them, I hope. Hi, geese. Wild geese. Right, so this was 20 minutes, a bit of a short one, a bit of a rant. May I? Okay, bye everybody.